In this video we're going to enter some customer transactions. The first thing we're going to do is create a new quote. I'm going to double click on the new quote pro forma option and we're going to raise our quote for a toy customer UK. I'm going to put a few different types of items on this quote. The first one's going to be a handgun. So I'm going to key the handgun in and we're going to have 10 handguns. You'll note that the sales price off the price list is £9. We're now going to key in bullets and we're going to have 10 lots of the bullets, and you'll notice the special price of £1.10 coming through. Now we're going to have a holster with a wholesale price of £8. We're going to have 10 of them also. Now I want a computer kit, and you'll see the kit configurator window come up where we can select what options we want on our computer kit, and as we tick one of these options you'll notice the price increases or decreases accordingly. I'm just going to have the default options on there, and that puts the kit on as a line like that, and I can click the little plus button next to it to expand the components out to see what went into the kit. The next thing that we're going to have is our Danger t-shirt. Now if I select the matrix group rather than the individual matrix items, I should get the matrix entry screen come up. Now in here I can key in whichever ones I want, so I could key in, if I just wanted a medium red, key in a medium red, or an extra large white, I could key in an extra large white like so. What I actually want to do for this one is we want one of everything. So in the top here I'm putting one in and I'm going to apply that to all of the items. The reason these are in red is because they're not in stock. If we had stock of these items, they'd show in black. Okay, so if I go OK that to put them on, you'll see it puts the individual items on there. Now I'm going to put our bike on, which was an assembly item, but we sell it as a standard stock item. And the last thing we're going to put on is our installation. Okay, and we're going to change that to be £100. So if I save my quote, notice it gets a quote number, and then I can click the print button on the toolbar to print the quote. So it comes up and says, what do you want to print? I'm printing a quote. I'm just going to print preview this to the screen. I can print it straight to a printer, I can print to file or email or fax it, or we've got a lowest cost route option as well, which we'll look at later. Just going to print preview on that. Okay, there's our quote, showing all the lines on there, etc. And you can see our logo on the top of the document that we put when we set up the system. Okay, so I'm going to close that down and close my print dialog window. I've finished with my quote. I'm now going to create another quote for a US customer, and we're just going to have 10 of the handguns, and 10 of the bullets. Again, I'm going to save the quote and print it. I'm now going to create a sales order for our toy customer UK, and this is going to be for 10 of the handguns, and 10 of the bullets. If I just save that order, you'll notice we get a sales order number this time, an SO number, and if I click the print button, it's defaulting to print the pick note. So if I print that to the screen again, so print preview, okay, there's my pick note with all of the items on. I now want to create an invoice from this order. There's two ways I can do that. I could either click the Convert Sales Invoice button here, or I can also close that sales order down and go into New Invoice, and I can select from a list of ready to invoice orders. So if I select that order and open it up, and we've got here the quantities that we're going to ship. Now if we just save at this point without actually posting, because we've got a separate post option on here, if we save the invoice, then this will allow us to print the invoice without actually posting to the customer's account and without taking the stock as well. We can post and close the invoice from here if we want to, or we've got a batch post menu option. Now I'll just save and close it, and go into post invoice, and that's the other way that you can batch post. And you can post a load of invoices in here, you don't have to go into each one and do them individually. So if I click OK, it'll post the invoice for me. I'm now going to go into customer preferences and turn ignore stock levels off. So basically now stock levels will get taken into account when I'm invoicing, so I won't be able to invoice more than I've got, so I won't be able to get the stock levels won't go negative, whereas when ignore stock levels was on, I can just invoice whatever I want to invoice with, regardless of what the stock quantity says. So change my stock levels to off, and I'm going to create another sales order for our UK customer. Okay, and this time we're going to put 10,000 handguns on. Okay, it warns me and says that it's more than the quantity I've got. I'll say yes, I still want to put it on, and I'm going to print the pick note. We can now see that the quantity to pick on a pick note is only 990 because it's looking at how many we've actually got in stock of these. Okay, now we'll go into new invoice again, and I'll pick up my sales order, and I'm going to create an invoice for that. Now we can see from there that the quantity is 10,000, but the ship quantity again is only going to 990. This is because obviously we haven't got all the stock in. So if I save and post on that, what we'll see happening is that we'll get back order for the remainder. So it's telling me back order 2-1, so it uses the same order number for the back order with -1, -2, -3, depending on which back order it is from that same sales order. Okay, so if we just go and have a quick look at the back order, there we can see the back order for the 9010. Okay, we're going to go and amend the preferences again and turn the stock levels back on for the next part. And we're going to create another order for a toy customer UK. We're going to put 100 handguns on. Again, it warns me that it's more than the stock I've got. Now in here we've got the workflow, and I can move this straight on to ready to invoice, so I don't have to print the pick note on that one. I'm going to save my order, and I'm going to create an invoice for the order. I'm going to do it through this screen this time. Okay, so this time both the quantity and the ship quantity is both 100, and this is because of the ignore stock levels flag. So I'm going to save and post that invoice again to take the goods out of stock and post the invoice to the customer ledger. Now I'm going to go back to the preferences once more and turn the levels back off again. Now I'm going to go and create another order for the customer UK, and it's going to be for 5,000 bullets. Save and close on that one. We're going to create another order for a French customer for 100 bullets. Okay, and we'll save and close. Now what we're going to do is go into the allocate stock routine. Okay, so we'll get the transactions. Now what we'll see is that the order for 5,000 has got has got 4,990 allocated, but zero's been allocated to our last order, the one for the French customer, because that order there has taken all of the stock. So basically, if we wanted to allocate to this sales order number 5 here, we would have to deallocate the stock like so, set all the quantities to 0, and then we can sort by whichever column we want. If we wanted to sort by a different column to allocate again, because this allocation routine allocates from the top down, so whatever order they're in on the screen is the order that it'll try to allocate in. Alternatively, I can click and drag the other order above the previous order. So then if I allocate the stock again, what we'll see is that my 100 order number 5 this time, has grabbed the 100, and there's only 4890 allocated to the other order. I can also print the pick notes through here, so any that are allocated, they have a tick next to them, and I can click the print pick note option here and print the pick notes for both of these at the same time. So basically this should only have the quantity to pick as the amount that's allocated. So 4890 on that one, and it would have been the full 100 on the other. Let me just print preview it again and scroll down. 4890 on that one, and if I scroll down, I've got the 100 on that one. Okay, we're now going to convert a quote to a sales order. So if I go into find quote, and we're going to pick our first quote, quote number 1, open it up, and I've got an option to convert to sales order on there. So if I click that and convert it, it tells me it's successfully done it. Do I want to view it? Yes. So this is our sales order that's come from the quote. So if I scroll along the line here, what we'll see is that the quote number is put onto the sales order lines, so we can see exactly where these lines have come from. So I'm going to save and close on that order, and I'm going to go and amend the customer preferences again and turn stock levels on. Okay, so now I'm going to create another order for a French customer, and this time we're going to have 1 case of bullets. So what I need to do is change the unit of measure here to be a case, like so, and we're going to have just 1 handgun. Now, while I'm on the bullets, you'll notice that the stock information in the bottom here is showing the quantity in cases now, because I've changed the unit of measure. So if it was eaches, it'd show a lot more, as obviously it'd show them individually rather than cases of 50. Okay, so I'm now going to save and close out of this order, and I want to go and print the pick notes, but I want to print them via the batch printing routine. So in here, under tools, we've got a batch printing folder, and in there we've got print picking notes. We can also print acknowledgements, delivery notes, invoices, etc. through here as well. So we've got our pick note printing here, I'm just going to print 6 and 7 in there and click OK. Brings up the dialog box. I'm just going to print these to the screen again, so we can see our pick notes printed. So we can print a whole number of pick notes through here if we want to. Okay, we're now going to create another invoice for sales order 7. So I'm going to go into new invoice and I'm going to pick up sales order 7. And I'm going to save and post this invoice. Okay, and then find order. So if I want to go and have a look at sales order 3, which is now in sales order history, and we're going to have a look at the shipped tab here, and we can see which invoice it was actually completed by. So this order was shipped out on invoice number 3. We can also view the commission tab here, and we should see the commission is 10% of the revenue, which is £90. So if I come out of here and go and run the process commissions routine, any previous commissions will be stored in this list here. I'm going to run a new one, and we say get all some commissions up to what date. Today should be fine. I'll do it for both sales reps, but I think the agent is the only one that we actually assign to any customers. And it then comes up with the invoices. So invoice 3 relates to sales order 3, which is the one that we just looked at for the £90, and we can drill down into that to see what items make that up. So we can see that that £90 consists of selling £900 worth, and he gets 10% of that £900. So if I pay the commissions on just that £90, let's presume that we only want to pay that one. So let's go through the wizard. Okay, so it gives us a summary on the next screen saying you're going to pay sales rep exactly how much. So if there's multiple invoices we selected on the previous screen, it would total them up in this screen. And then when we finish the wizard, it tells me that it's successfully created as an expense bill. So basically, because this was set up as an agent in the system, it's gone and created a bill onto the agent's account. So if I say yes, I want to view that, I can have a quick look at the bill that is generated. It just be an expense bill. Okay, so there's my bill, £90. So I now know that I've got £90 bill outstanding on that sales agent's ledger, and I'm going to have to pay him. Okay, we're now going to create an invoice, but not an invoice directly linked to a sales order. We're going to create an invoice, just direct invoice basically. So if I go into the active customers tab rather than the ready to invoice tab, I can then pick up a customer, and I'm going to do this for the US Customer Inc. And it's going to have 10 bullets on it, and it's going to have 10 handguns. And then here, if I want to, I can change the exchange rate. So I'm going to change that to 2. And I'm then going to save it. And again, I can either save and post through here, or I can do it through the post invoices menu option. Once we've saved and posted an invoice, it's important to know that you can't amend it, whereas if you just save it, you can come in later and amend it. I'm going to save and post through this screen. And if I just open that invoice back up again, find invoice, open it up, I can also view the journal by clicking the View Journal button, and I can see the journal that's created in the background. And you'll note that it does confirm cost of goods postings automatically. Enterprise Hub will always do the confirm cost of goods sold. Okay, so back in the invoice, what we're going to do this time is convert this to a credit memo, which will basically create a credit identical to the invoice. So it'll effectively reverse the invoice. So if we say yes to create a credit memo from that, and there's our credit memo. So basically putting the goods back into stock basically. And we've got an option here whether they're coming back in as good stock. So if we sent them out in error or we sent the wrong parts, we put them back into our main location in the warehouse so we can sell them again. But if they're defective in some way, we'd probably put the quantity in the defective column, which comes into our defective location, and we can't then sell the goods straight away. We'd have to transfer the ones that were actually good back into the main location at some point in the future. So I'm going to save and close on my credit. And I'm just going to create the credit. I don't want it to allocate to anything. I'll do the allocation manually later. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is create an RMA, and I'm going to create it for just an active customer for A-Toy Customer UK. So an RMA is like a stage before a credit really. It's sort of authorising the customer to send you the goods back. So we're going to have 10 bullets on our RMA, and if we save it, we can see we get a unique CRMA reference. So sometime later we'll assume that the goods have now come back to us, so the customer's actually sent the goods back, so we're now going to process the RMA and create a credit note. There's two ways that we can do that. We can either do it from within the RMA, convert to credit note there, or you can do it from new credit note and select from an open RMA. So if I just close that and go into new credit note, I have the option here of selecting one from an open RMA. So if I double click that, okay, now again I can put these into good or defective. For this one we're going to put it all into good and save the credit. Again, I'm just going to create it. If I then click the print button, I can then print the credit. Okay, there's my credit note. Okay, I'm going to go and create another RMA now. This time though from an existing invoice. So like we created a credit from an existing invoice, we can create an RMA from an existing invoice. So we need to put in here the quantities that we're going to confirm on the RMA. So you can see here we shipped 10 of the handgun and 10 of the bullets. So we're going to set these quantities to be half of the amounts we shipped. So we're just going to put 5 in there and 5 in there. We're then going to save the RMA. Save and close. The next thing we're going to do is create a credit note again. So new credit note, and this time we're going to just do it from an active customer. So not from an RMA, not from an invoice, but the third tab along for an active customer. And we're going to do it for A-Toy Customer UK. And we're going to have 10 bullets on here. Again, we're entering the quantity into the good column, put them back into normal stock. And this credit isn't linked to an RMA or anything else. So I'm just going to save and close on that. Again, create the credit. Don't want to allocate it. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is create a customer receipt. So I'm going to go into the new customer receipt option, and we're going to create our customer receipt for A-Toy Customer UK. And it's going to be for £100. I'm going to put £100 into the quantity. And if I just click save at that point, when I'm happy with the values I've put in, I get a receipt number at the top. I can then go in the allocation details tab and allocate my receipt off to something else. So what I can now do is it automatically ticks receipt number 1, and we want to allocate that to invoice number 1. So our credits for £100. So if we click invoice number 1, what it will do is part allocate. So it can only allocate the 100, and we'll still have a balance of £28.49 outstanding on our invoice. Okay, so if I save that It will do the allocation for me, tells me there's no gain or loss being posted for that transaction. What I'm now going to do is go and have a look at the customer, so I can either go into find customer, or I can click on this customer detail button from here, which takes me straight into the customer account. I'm going to go into the transactions tab, and then I'm going to go into the ledger. Okay, and this shows me all open transactions to start with. Now if I want to see the allocation on that, if I look at my invoice, which was that one, invoice number 1, we can see it's now got an outstanding balance of $28.49. We can also see the original balance of the invoice was $128.49. So if I double click on the outstanding balance, it'll tell me why that what the allocation consists of. So I can see that the receipt of £100 was allocated to it, which is why obviously the balance was less. Okay, so I'll close that and close that. So I'm going to go and create another customer receipt for our US customer this time. And it's going to be $100, but the exchange rate is going to be 1.5. Doing this so that we can show a loss or gain transaction. And we're going to still use the UK bank. And we can actually, if we double click on the currency amount, we can put a charge in there. So we're actually going to put a £1 bank charge into here. So let's presume that for putting dollars into our UK bank, into our GBP bank, we're going to get charged £1 for it. So I'll close that like so. Okay, and then we'll save the receipt. And then if I drill down into the bank account using the hyperlink on the receipt, we can have a look at the transaction shown in our bank account. So there's basically the £100 receipt I did on the first for our UK customer. There's our 66.67 for our US customer, and you can see there's the pound going out of our bank, which is for the bank charge that I entered. Okay, so if I go back from this and go into the allocation details for our receipt, what I'm now going to do is allocate this receipt here to invoice number 5. Okay, so again we're going to have an outstanding amount on our receipt, and if I save that receipt, this time there is gain or loss generated, and I've now got a journal. So if I look at the journal, this journal is for the actual currency gain or loss transaction. Now the Enterprise will only post actual gains or losses at the time of allocation. It won't do them any other time when we're entering the receipt or anything like that. It's only when we actually go to allocate the receipt. Okay, next thing we're going to do is void a receipt. So if we go into down the bottom under tools, we've got a void receipt option here, and we can select from any posted receipt. So we're going to choose receipt number 1, which was the one for £100. So let's assume they sent us a check and maybe the check bounced, so we need to create the void receipt. So if we go into the receipt tab, use the void button on the toolbar, say yes, tells us there was no gain or loss posted there. But if we just go and have a look now at the allocation details, we'll notice that receipt number 1 has now been allocated against our void receipt transaction, and the invoice, if we already had an invoice allocated against the receipt, that will have been deallocated as well. So it does it all for us. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is create a customer refund. So we're giving the customer some money back, so we need to show it on our bank account, etc. So we're going to create a refund for A Toy Customer UK. Okay, it's just going to be a £10 refund, fairly straightforward. Bank account again, and we just save that and it'll get a refund number. There we go. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is the intrastat analysis. So hopefully the French transaction should show on our intrastat analysis. So if I go into here and do it for a range of a month, let's just see. Well, we can see already it's showing on there 110.96, which is the correct one. So until this transaction has been confirmed through the customer module, it won't actually show for reconciliation in the accounting module. It's the same for the supplier as well. So you have to confirm the intrastat transactions in the appropriate customer and supplier module before they'll actually appear in the accounts module. So I'm just going to confirm that in there. I can also look at the detail behind it to see what exactly we've got that goes into that value, and we've got things like the supplementary units commodity code. So whoever should be doing this should really be checking to see that all the details are on there, that all the correct things have been put in. So when I'm happy, I'm confirming it and I click OK, and that's now been reconciled from the customer ledger, so it will now show on the accounts module. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create what we call a batch invoice, which is basically just a direct ledger invoice. And I'm going to do this for A-Toy Customer UK. Okay, I'm going to enter a customer PO in here of test 001. And we're going to change the terms to be 30 days from the document date. Okay, and our figures are going to be £100 plus £17.50, £117.50 gross. Now if I change the terms back to the 40 days 10% discount if paid within 7 days, which is the top one. Okay, what we'll see is that the VAT amount has now been changed on the discounted amount. You can override this, but that's what it's calculating correctly from the terms. So on here I'm going to change the nominal analysis to be 4,000. Okay, so we've got £100 on there, but what I want to do is change that to be £50. So on here I'm going to change that value to be 50, and then what I'm going to do is put 4001 on the next line, and I'm going to also analyse £50 to that. And what I'll see is that the tax has been split between the two lines, so we've got 788 on one line and 787 on another. We're just going to save and close on this invoice. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just go and amend the preferences and switch credit approval on, which is here. And I'm now going to go and amend the customer record for, I'm going to find customer into Toys International, which is there. And I'm going to put a credit limit on this account of £1,000. So in the setup tab, £1,000. Okay, we're now going to create an order for Toys International. Consisting of bullet at £10. And if I use the control right arrow key, I can go straight from the quantity to the sales price without having to tab across or use my mouse to get across there. So I'm going to save that order. I'm going to create another order now for Toys International. Okay, and this time I'm going to have one bullet. This time we're £100, and on the second line I'm going to have a handgun at £900. At that point it will come up and tell us that the customer is over the credit limit, so we can see that the system is looking on a line by line basis at the credit limit. It'll still let me save the order though, so I'm just going to save that order, but it will have now held it for credit basically. So if I now go into the credit approval routine, which is in the credit control folder I think. No, it's not. It's approve credit there under tools, and select that order. I can now confirm that through the credit approval routine to move the status on, so it will be ready to pick the pick notes for. So until I process through credit approval, it's not going to let me pick the pick notes so that it can then send it away to the warehouse for picking. Okay, so that's that order gone through. If I now go into find order, pick up our latest order, we'll see that the workflow is now on print pick note, whereas before it would have been at credit approval. So I'm going to print the pick note for this order in batch document printing. Could obviously pick more in there if I wanted to as well. Next thing I'm going to do is go into the confirm pick routine and confirm quantities for my order, which is sales order 9. Now what I can do when I confirm items through here, what it will do is it will create an invoice for me automatically. So it's effectively confirming that we're actually shipping these items. So if I click the little plus button next to that, I can see exactly what goes into making this sales order. So I've got it ticked. I'm going to OK it. It says, are you sure you want to confirm? Yes. That order now disappears from the list. And if I now go into find invoice, I can now see I've got an invoice there for this particular order. The invoice isn't posted though, so I would need to actually go and post this invoice separately. Now I'm going to have a quick look at the credit control folder. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the outstanding balances, and this will basically just show me a list of the top 10 outstanding balances, top 10 debts effectively. I can increase that number here to show 20, 50, 100, etc. So we can see the top 10 balances there. I'm now going to go and have a look at the overall age debt, which is the next option down. Okay, and this shows us basically our age debtors. What I can do is, if I drill down using these hyperlinks, I can drill into the customer, and when I drill into a customer from here, it automatically puts us in the credit receivables tab. Now in here we can put promise dates on payments, send copy invoices and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is enter a promised payment date on a couple of invoices. So let me go down to these invoices, and we're going to put a promised payment date of the end of January. I'll do that on invoice 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and then if I tick 2 of these invoices, any 2, let's presume the customer said I didn't receive the invoice to start with, then we can tick 2 invoices and click the send copy invoice button. What this will then do is open the normal print dialog screen, and what I can then do is go and print them to an email. Like so. And then print. What that should do is just go and put them in my outbox for me. Okay, so it tells me saved in outbox done. So I'm going to close that now and close that as well. I'm going to have a look at the mail client, and I should now see in here that I've got my invoice PDF. If I open that up, I can see there I've got my 2 invoices in there, which are the 2 I ticked to send. Okay, because we put 2 promised payments on that customer, on them 2 invoices, what I can now do is go into promised payment screen, and what we'll see is any invoices that haven't got a promised payment will just show with this date of 01/01/01. I'm just going to minimize that section. Now these ones are the ones that I put a promised payment on, so if you've got other promised payment dates, it will group them all together as you go through, so you can quickly see what's been promised, so you can easily have a look at it and say by the end of the month, you know, who's promised to pay me, who do I need to chase for payment if they haven't already paid me. Okay, let's have a quick look at the predicted cash flow, which is based on the average days to pay of each customer, according to their according to how long they've taken in the past to pay us, and then it looks at their outstanding debts, etc. Okay, now we're going to try and use the lowest cost route routine for doing a statement run. So what we're going to do is go and make sure that our data is set up correctly. So the first thing that I'm going to do is going to have a look at ATOY Customer UK and make sure it has a default email, an email address on the default contact or account record, which it does. I've got one there. I'm then just going to check the French customer to make sure that it has no email address, but it does have a fax number. So it's got a fax number. Let me just check the contact to make sure that hasn't got an email. No, so that's set up correctly as well. And now I'm going to have a look at the US customer to make sure they haven't got any email address or fax number. I'm just going to double click the contact to make sure that hasn't got an email address or a fax number, which is correct. And lastly, that they should have at least one outstanding transaction on their account, which they should have. So what I'm going to do now is go and run a statement run. Okay, so in here we can select which customers we want to run the statement run for. And run it for all, which will show me all my customers. Now what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to tick the customers that I've just been looking at, which is UK, US and French customers. And we can see from here that they have all got a balance, I think. Yeah, they've all got balances on them, so that should work okay. So I'll go next and finish, and this should bring me up the print dialog box, and this time I'm going to go for lowest cost route. So by going for lowest cost route, if they've got an email address, it will try and email it. If they don't have an email address but they've got a fax number, it will try and fax it, and if they've got neither of them, it's going to try and print it. So I'm just going to try and print that. Tells me that the printer's unavailable because I'm not actually connected to a printer. But what I should see, if I close this, obviously if I was connected to a printer, it'd print out for me. If I go into my mail client here, back into the outbox, I should see that I've got a fax there in the format of an email with a fax number at fax.tc, which is what we discussed in the system manager option for our fax provider, and we've also got the email there for the email, so we can see that that's working okay. Okay, we're now going to go and create a recurring transaction, which is down here under tools. A recurring transaction is basically for a recurring sales order, so we're going to do it for sales order number 1, and we're going to recur every 2 days starting on the 15th of January. Need to give it a description. Okay, if I then go into process recurring transactions, I should see my order in the list. So I tick that and click OK to process the order. It then runs the wizard, and it's going to show me how many recurring orders I should do. So from the 15th of Jan, every 2 days, it's saying I need to do 5 transactions up to the date where I am at the moment. So if I tick the ones I want to recur, which I'll do all of them, I've got select all button up here, may as well do that, and then go next, and what it will do is it will create all my recurring transactions and finish. Now in the amend recurring transaction tab, I can go and amend the transaction to recur at less frequency, more frequency, or I can inactivate it as well. And in the history tab, there's nothing there. If I go into here and into detail, that's how I see the orders, not through the history tab. Okay, I'm going to have a look at the attached documents screen now. So if we're going to attach documents, okay, we can say what type of documents we want to look at. We're going to have a look at invoices. So if I put invoices in and say I want to see all documents, it'll bring up my list of invoices. So what I'm going to do is just pick one invoice. Invoice 1 seems a good place to start. And then click the attach button on the toolbar. Attach document, and I can attach any document. I'll attach one of my import files. Give it description. Okay, so that should have attached that document onto invoice number 1. I could have selected multiple invoices in there to attach the same document to multiple invoices. So if I now go into my customer record, I think it was Toy Customer UK, into the transactions, into ledger, and have a look at invoice 1, what I'll see is that the icon here is now showing that I've got an attachment. The X's in there mean that they haven't got an attachment. So if I can also create another attachment for another transaction by clicking that icon, and it then takes me into the same screen as before. So I can select that, I can then attach your documents. Okay, that. And I can now see, if I go back to another tab and back in, I now see that both of these have got that same icon showing that they have in fact got a document attached. If I open the invoice up, then on the attachments section, that's where we can see what attachment is on there. We can double click that from there and open the file up. It saves it into the database. Okay, we're now going to find customer and look at our customers. Now if we search for anything in the find screens, and this is the same for all the find screens really, it'll search through all of the fields, so we're not just searching on customer names or anything like that. So searching for Lankin here, for instance, we'll search anything with Lancashire or any other fields with the words Lankin to pull that up for you. Also, just a useful note is when we're going to find order, it keeps open sales orders and history separate. So the main tab that we're probably interested in is the main orders. We've also got history tab to show orders that have been completed, etc. And when we go in to find invoice, we've got posted and printed flags. A posted flag's particularly useful, so we can see straight away if an invoice has actually been posted or whether we need to post it through to the ledger. Now going to run a sales daybook for invoices. To run reports in Enterprise, we do switch dashboard and go into the reports, and whichever module you're in at the time you switch dashboard, it will show you the appropriate reports for that module. So we want a sales daybook invoice report. So if I double click that, okay, so in here I can obviously choose my standard printer option, so I can print my report to file, so I can take it out to Excel or print a PDF or something like that. If I go into the filter criteria option here, we can limit the number of records on our report by saying I only want to see certain dates, document codes, etc. That's how we'd run our criteria. I just print the full report just so we can have a look, and there's our sales daybook invoices showing us all the invoices that we've posted just in this module. That concludes the customer transactions. We'll be looking at the supplier transactions next in the next video.